I just hope that you have had a good day until now and you're ready to take in some more information this evening. And I guess you are if you are listening. So let's just see what this hour will look like. And what I'm going to do is just give a short intro about me and about Cypress, what it is. Then we will spend the major part of this hour coding some tests from scratch on a demo project. And I will demonstrate some features of Cypress this way, but of course I will only touch the minor part. So I will mention a few more after quickly, and then we will have time for questions. About me, well, it's hard to speak about me. I would say a really important quality is I'm an explorer. You can see the spirit in this photo. And I've been exploring systems for 15 years now. So I've been exploring them by testing manually, automating the tests, and I've been leading multiple different teams of testers, guilds as well. So during this time, I really discovered that I like sharing my knowledge, I like sharing my discoveries. So I am one of the organizers of Bugs Allowed meetup. Actually, I think that's how we met with Rinvida, so it's kind of an exchange now. I have spoken in different events about testing or continuous delivery. That's also a big interest to me. And this year I started mentoring in Women Go Tech. I became a mentor and an expert, and this is actually my touch point to Cypress because I have been automating with different tools, with Watin, with Selenium, with Swift, that is XUI test, that is my current job. And so when I learned about Cypress, I got really tempted to learn it. It sounded cool, but I didn't really have a proper opportunity at work. And so I decided if I want to teach this woman something new, I would like to learn something new myself as well. And that's how I started looking into Cypress. So I'm not an expert in it, but I really enjoyed that tool. And I thought it's worth sharing these first experiences and some approaches that I have taken in from my previous experience with other tools. So you might find it as well or useful or inspiring to try it by yourself. So that's it about me. And now let's see what I can say as a short intro to Cypress. I really love this quote from their website. It's right there on top. It's immediately comparing itself between the lines with Selenium. If you have tested with that, you know that at some point, it can be really frustrating, and it claims to be less frustrating, let's say like that. I found it to be the case most of the time when I was trying it out. Yeah, it really, if it bases like that as a different tool, we can maybe look how it is different. And of course, it's not the only one there is, but I think it's the strongest candidate now. So, so yeah, it's a big list, but I will probably not explain all the points in here. But basically, they have different architecture. Cypress runs in a browser, so it can run, it can access everything that the browser can, and it's also kind of a different purpose. A little bit, so it's aimed at the developers as well, not only QAs as much as Selenium is, and I think that's the reason for its growing popularity. So because of that growing popularity, it has also more and more answers you can find on the internet. In comparison, Selenium has always had huge community, so you can practically find answers to whatever question you have on Stack Overflow. And then there are more differences on technical level or just how the tool is made. Like, for example, There are no explicit weighting or implicit weighting in Cypress, so it just handles that for you. But yeah, or not, but I will just keep on saying some other good things. We will see in the live demo, it has, for example, this really nice visual test runner, whereas in Selenium, you have to think which test runner you would like to use, which features it supports, how it acts, and have to like combine it a little bit like a Lego. So yeah, but then Selenium is more flexible. It has more browser support. It has tab support. It has mobile support if you include Appium as part of Selenium, which is kind of true. And you can code in your own selected language out of many, whereas Cypress only supports JavaScript. So yeah, they are quite different. And I would say for a certain project, if I would be picking a tool, I would really think of what I need. But if I just want to try out some scenarios, the start was definitely easier with Cypress. So that's it. You can have this slide for your further reference. And yeah, I think that's all it takes to do really an intro. Now we can breathe in and go for a live demo. For that, I need to switch to this screen, and we will do the live demo on this website, automationpractice.com. It's a fake online shop, so yeah, it has items to buy, which you cannot buy in reality. And I have been using this website for various trainings and workshops. It works kind of well, except it's sometimes slow or breaks under load. So my request for you is when you practice, like Rumi just mentioned, this code will be accessible in GitHub. Don't do it June 1st, because I will have another workshop and I want this website to be as stable and fast as it can be. So yeah, I'm here already logged in. And yeah, I will show in a moment some more functionality of it. But before that, I will present my setup of the screen, because we will be using it for the next half an hour or so. So I have here my code editor, Visual Studio Code. I could really use any. And I have terminal here, which I have used to run Cypress. And I have the Cypress here open. So I have yeah, the tests that I have currently listed here, and I can choose a browser. And if I open this test thing, it opens Cypress test running, immediately starts running the test, and I can see the same website. And each step that you can also see on the left that I have described here is listed out, and I can see how the page looked like at any step. This is really powerful and very pleasant to use. And if I change something here, for example, this, and save, it will immediately rerun. So if I just keep this window in the background, I will have at any given point in time. Oh, and I have this reflex to save my file, so it just restarted. So that's why I usually turn it off, because it distracts me. But on the other hand, it's a way to always know if the code you're writing at the moment, if it actually works. Okay, so I will turn this off, and I can also show that as I was starting editing here, that it has really nice autocomplete. Somehow does not work. Yeah, there it is. So even if I don't know Cypress that well, I can very quickly find out about its features and about its possibilities and commands that it has, both for these are commands and for assertions. So as I already started looking into this code window, I will just explain what I have as a starting point for our demo. So I have taken the sample project that Cypress always creates, and I have written one file with 2 very tiny tests for login functionality. And I suppose that you have done some automation with any tool, and that I think makes these tests quite self-explanatory, even if you might not know how Cypress commands work, but it's pretty self-explanatory, I suppose. So there are element selectors, as always. There are jQuery selectors in Cypress case, and it uses the syntax from Mocha and from Chai. It actually bundles in those tools. So especially those who have written perhaps tests with other JavaScript-based tools will also be familiar with this syntax. And what else I can show here? There's a before each. So you might have seen that in Selenium and in other tools as well. It is very common. And one thing that I can mention here as well is that I don't specify any URL here. So it seems this test shouldn't really know that they should go to automationpractice.com. So here I can already jump into showing some Cypress feature that is configuration file. So I have here Cypress JSON where I have specified one setting, base URL, and it's available to all tests. So then they know which URL to base the further requests on. And this file can be huge. It can have really many settings. I will have included in the slides in the end some links for further reading. So one of them will include a link to this configuration explanation to many things that you can set here. So I guess that's it. That's our starting point. And now, by the way, you can see that in the terminal, all the requests that happened when I was running the test are also logged. So this can be also useful in some cases. Now I would like to show another piece of functionality in this page called My Addresses under My Account. And what we will do today is write a couple of tests here. So as you can see, I, as a user, have one address here, and I can add a new address. And when I do that, something is pre-filled for my user. Most of the things I have to fill in. Here is not really much to select. I have to be from the United States. And there's a field with an address title that will be visible there. It has to be unique. And if I would save that address, it would go back to this page, and it will be added here. And then I can also edit. Then it would look more or less like this. So this is what we will do today. Write these 2 tests. And when you play around later on, you can do more. You can, for example, delete or whatnot, whatever comes to your mind. So this is our plan. Okay, I will close this page because we have more or less seen. Or actually, I will just before closing it, I'll show one more thing that might be important for our tests, so we don't need to look at it later. When we want to check something here, these elements are, they have these strange white spaces around them, so we will have to have that in mind, right? Yeah, so all around all these elements, we have these white spaces. And now we more or less have in mind how our address page looks like. Of course, you will not remember if you do real coding just from there, or you will have to get your selectors. But I have that code ready. It would be too slow for me to go inspecting elements in the live coding session. So I will just lead through what I have semi-prepared. And the first thing is just some thinking process about what do I actually need to write those tests for addresses, because yeah, I just have this project here and it has one file for login. Probably those tests don't belong here. But anyway, what do I need functionality wise? I need to be logged in, right? I need to go to my account and my addresses. I have to click on add a new address and check perhaps those fields that were pre-filled. Then I have to fill in all the rest of the mandatory fields at least. I have to change the name to a unique one. I have to save and then do some verifications. So I might want to check that I'm back in the list, that the address is there, and it has correct details, and that it did not replace any of the previous addresses. So perhaps that the address count is bigger than it was before. More or less, these are my ideas, at least initially, when I think about what I would like to check about adding a new address. So what I will do now is just add a new file, because I probably or obviously want to separate addresses test from login test, and I will just add some specification skeleton here. So yeah, this is where our addresses test will go, and there will be a test that that will check if I can add a new address. And now I want to think about that first precondition about logging in. And here, although I haven't written almost any code yet, I have to already start talking about test structure, about which pattern I want to use for this code that I want to be reusable, because of course I want to be able to reuse the login code. So in Selenium, a most typical, a classic approach is to use page object pattern, right? Those who might not be familiar, although I believe many of you are, it makes me create classes for each page or a section that is common, and describe the elements there and methods that interact with those elements, and then the test would just use those. It is a very common pattern, but there's some kind of, I don't know how to call that, activity against that, and two, some say it violates some coding principles, good coding principles, and Cypress seems to be on that side of the camp. They don't recommend using page object pattern. I will include a link to read more about that from their page, so that could be quite interesting for you if you are trying to decide at any point. So what does it suggest instead of page object pattern? It suggests a few possibilities, and one of them is custom commands. So there's this file commands.js that's added by default, and it has this sample content. It shows that we can add commands and we can override even existing ones. And I'll just delete that and add a command for login. So then all my tests will be able to access this. Basically, as you can see, it's very trivial description, and it does the same thing as we see before, as we have seen before, and it has parameters for username and for password. And now I wouldn't like to hard code those user credentials every time again, right? Because I will probably use this command in many files, in many test specifications. So I will immediately jump to showing one more Cypress feature called fixtures, and they're here. So there's a folder that had an example fixture, I think, that I had deleted. What I will do is add one called users JSON. So it will be basically a JSON file with a list of users. For our very beginning of our tests, just one user will be there. And for login, I only need this information, but I will need some more for addresses because we saw that something is pre-filled. So I immediately added it here. And this is how it looks like. And now that we have this command and we have our user data available, we are already ready to log in from basically any test. So what I will do is show how those fixtures can actually be accessed, and it looks like this. Before each address test, we will just go to the page and then fetch that fixture, and then I'm already using the syntax as if it were English language, but it's actually Cypress command that is very important to mention. So we will run into it many times today. Cypress runs its tests in a different manner than Selenium does, where just everything happens in sequence. So so here it runs all the commands first and kind of just queues them to run asynchronously. So if I didn't use this then actually the user object would stay empty because it wouldn't have executed fetching the fixture any earlier than it would have executed the attempt to log in. So that's why when we wanted the things to happen in certain sequence, we have to say one command and then use then, and then inside that there's a like a function that that happens. All the things that have to happen afterwards go into that function. So so yeah, more or less that. It sounds a bit cumbersome in the beginning, but it's possible to get the hang of it quite fast. Okay, so so now our test is able to log in, and we shouldn't forget to update actually our login because now it can actually use the same command, but we will not bother for this demo. So in GitHub you will see it updated, but I will leave it here for now because I want to jump right into working with addresses. We have been going on about login for quite a while, and we want to actually write some code for addresses, right? So I guess we are coming back to the same question. Where do we put that kind of code? Do we put it into custom commands, all of it? So that's one way. But another thing that Cypress recommends is using a very simple thing, simple JavaScript functions. And the point is that they could be placed where you like. So for example, if I work with addresses, probably the only file that is really interested in that code will be this address file. So what I will do is actually make some structure in this file and add first function that will go to addresses. And it will look like this. As simple as some separators and the function that just visits the website at a certain controller. The beginning comes from Cypress JSON, right? I just need to access this function in my test, and it's as simple as that. So I've seen actually quite a few examples from Cypress where they don't use these functions. They just write all the selectors, all the commands like this in the test, but then they become quite long, and I found that some of them I want to reuse. So when I don't write everything into functions, it becomes harder to read because something is a function, something is just a lot of accessing the elements in the test, and the readability becomes poor. I really like them to be short and concise. So actually, I will just, for the longer part of this demo, I will be using the same approach. I will be adding more functions to work with addresses and use them in the test. So we all see some more of it. So okay, I've been writing already quite a lot of things. We want to test perhaps if it works. I will just trigger it. And while it's spinning, I want to look at what goes next. We are going to addresses. We probably want to add this address, right? This happened, was successful. So now I want to think of, okay, this address has a lot of fields and I want to fill them in. So I will just add a function to set up that data, right? It's as simple as a JavaScript object for address. Some things to mention here is that these details come from the fixture that we created, right? This one, because they are pre-filled from the user. And although this user has actually an empty company, so that will be a trick for us later, but still, it's pre-filled. If I had entered any company for this user, it would be some text there. Then there's address that I generate so that it becomes unique. And I think there's nothing really much special here. So I will just add one more function to actually fill in those fields. And now here is just Cypress commands. So we see we always get an element by an ID in this case, except for the button. And we type. And what I really like about Cypress is that these commands can be chained. We already saw that before, but here it's really nicely visible that I can clear the previous text in the field and type, and I don't need to do any extra work for making these things chainable. So that's really nice. Okay, so we have those functions, and we can use them in the code to do some actions. The only thing that you might have thought of if you're used to coding is that where is this user defined? So I have defined it in the for each. I will need it to be accessible everywhere. So I'll just move it here. And now we can run this in the background because it will be a lot of actions. But meanwhile, we can already think about the verifications, because there's quite a list of verifications that I mentioned that could be useful. Okay, as you can see, it's also blazing fast. And here we see already our address. So I didn't do the verification. I didn't need to do anything else in the runner. I can already see visually that the address got added. I'm really satisfied with that. And now I want to do a couple of small verifications first. So here they are. One is about that the address list is shown. So I just want the header to be as it was. And another one is I want to check that my address appears there. So I just check it by the title that I will pass to this function. And I will just do that in my test. You can see the test is becoming longer. It's still very readable. Yeah, I think I will not even bother yet to test that this works. Now I want to verify address details. So I will need a function that basically reads from those fields, right? And make more space here. That reads from those fields and compares them to that object that we had created. There it is, the function. So there's more to look into here a little bit. So some Cypress commands that we haven't yet seen. So if you remember that box, the address is really like a gray box. So what we can do with Cypress is very easily find an element, in this case the title header, like this one as well, and then find its parent of a certain type, and then look within that element and execute all the rest of the commands within that element. So super useful. I just write, like, kind of dive into that box and then check each element there. And then the checks are as simple as before, basically getting the element and checking that they contain text. But you see the difference is have text here and contain text here, because we saw those white spaces. So basically have text makes comparison of equal, whereas here it contains. So super comfortable. And the checks of the elements are, well, quite clumsy, some of them, but this is the quality of the page that we have. So for example, here 2 of them are not unique. Here they don't have any classes or identifiers, so we just have to go by index. But for practicing purposes, it serves well. In reality, I will probably complain to the developers, right? So yeah, we have this method for verifying address details, and let's verify them. Okay. And the final thing that that I wanted to verify was verifying that we have more addresses than before after adding. So I could do that by just getting the address titles, the list of them, and seeing the count. That sounds like something you might have done in your tests. So the function is very simple, just to get all the elements with this identifier. But counting them apparently is less easy in Cypress than it would have been in Selenium, for example. So how it works is we have to remember that we have to specify the sequence of those commands. So after I go to addresses and I want to check the address count, I have to get addresses, use this function that I just made, and then set the initial count. If I hadn't done this and just done get the addresses, initial count is get addresses dot length, I would have 0. Let me just format this a little bit, because everything falls into this function, and then after verifying the address details, I will need to get addresses list again. So same story, I have to get addresses, then get their count, and then I can compare it to the previous count. So just need to close this, and this is how it looks like. So now we have actually quite a comprehensive test, and it would be really worth testing if it works. Also have a pause from speaking, and yeah, it is spinning. Okay, we're good to go. Expected 3 to be above 2. Smooth. Our test just checked quite many things and it went fast. I will close it. So given this good luck, we want to perhaps write another test that would be fairly similar. So we don't need many new concepts here, the same page, just editing that address. And we will see more of the same concepts that we have seen, but 1 or 2 Cypress functions in addition. So for editing, I will just add a skeleton for the test. And here what I did was write only. Now what is only in this context? So it's actually a very useful thing that Cypress provides for saying that only this test will now be run, because it runs basically all tests that are in specification that I open. But if I select only here, then only this test runs, and so this is super useful when writing a new test. And it has like another counterpart that is called skip. So vice versa, if I see that for example some test is broken, then I can say skip instead of only, and that test will be ignored until I'm ready to run it again. So I will say only here, and now concentrate on thinking about editing the address. So what do I need to edit? I will need to basically somehow store an address details and then change some of them and type them in. And for storing that address, I will write a function. There could be also a question which address I should update. So for the sake of the example, I'm just storing and updating the last address. That could be a questionable approach, but we are just doing a demo. So it's more of the same, but this method was actually the most complicated part because it combines both getting the elements. By the way, this is also a very convenient method or command to work with lists of elements, the same parents within them, but then to store each value, I need to not only get the element and assign its value, but I actually have to use then, because only then these things happen only then these values are retrieved before running the other commands. So it's a bit cumbersome as well, again, but it's still very short. I like that these Cypress commands are super short, so they still fit in into reasonable amount of code. And then I have trim in the end to compensate for those white spaces again. So so that's that. Basically just going through those fields, and I basically combined this method from the other ones that I already had. So now we can start those address details, and let's see how to do that. Here's how we do that, and this will probably sound familiar by now. I have to store just details and then have to change the address, right? But what is this wrap about? So this store last address details returns an object, a JavaScript object. It doesn't contain a function, then it doesn't understand it. But if I wrap it, then it becomes a Cypress command kind of that returns that object. So it's a very convenient way also to allow to chain pretty much any code that you write into nice chained commands. And now let's just change a few things, random things about the address, title, and a couple more fields. These are the new values that I decided that it will have. And now I want to probably write a function that will actually update the address. Click on the button, edit or update or whatever it was called. Yeah, it was called update. So here's how it looks like. This is a very simple function. It does the same things we have seen before. So clears the field's previous value and types a new one. But I mentioned that company has no value, and Cypress unfortunately doesn't handle that well. It says that it cannot type an empty value, because how do you actually do that, right? So I found a workaround, and the workaround is to add a command override for it. So basically looks like this. And basically, if a string is empty, it just doesn't do anything. So this will help us not get lost while the test is failing. So now we are typing these new values. And I can do that in the test. There we go. And now we would like to verify address details after updating to see that they are updated in the list. And for that, actually, we get that for free. We have already that method from previous tests. So let's run this test. Or not. Let's see what's wrong. I might need some brackets here or there. Yeah, so as you can see, it's running only the edit test. Not very successful, though. But I think I will not spend time on this because we don't have much time left. I want you to be able to ask questions, but we're almost there. You can see how it could look like. So the last thing I want to show is how we could preserve user sessions between these two tests, because you can see it will work. We remove this. We want to run both tests now. It will work, but the login will happen through the UI and it's slow. So what Cypress has is the possibility to preserve cookies. And I would add that to command.js. This is one of several ways that it can be done. The page has, it would be better to specify cookie name, but this specific website has really weird cookie names, so I'm just saving all of them. And then what I can do is write before, which will be executed only once, and move the login to, oh, I know what was wrong with that test now. So, okay. So in the before, we log in, and in before each, we just say that we will reuse the cookies. There we go. But one thing that I forgot is to say that this that we had added to add addresses, that we should go to addresses first. So now now we should be able to execute this test, because here, as you can see, I started without even going to addresses because I had forgotten that I wanted it in the before each. So now we have those tests, and they are really, the second one especially was really fast to write, and there we go. This is pretty much all the demo that I wanted to show you. Just want to have my victory of the green tests, and I will, yeah, there we go. And I will go back to some things that I didn't manage to show in this demo, but I would like to share with you just quickly so that you can go deeper. So one is that I really find fascinating that Cypress allows to intercept network requests and basically change the response or request itself to whatever you like. So that that I think is very powerful, and I've seen people use that. It gives like power just to know when to execute something, for example, or to see how the web page looks like with certain data. It's really nice. Then it has a way to debug, although it's quite useful. That runner, it's very powerful to just see things visually, but it also has a way to trigger developer tools console, so that it shows the element information there, and you can debug your app in there just like you would, especially if you're a developer. I didn't find myself using this one, but I added an example that works on our page that you can try out by yourselves in the repository. It will be there. Then another thing that is also really sweet, that they have a very flexible way to retry the test. So we have been using this open mode, but for command line, the mode is called run, and you can say that, for example, in command line mode, there are more retries done automatically for the tests. And you can even specify that one test in particular, if you find it flaky, that this test is retried more. So that's super flexible. And then it has a lot of plugins. So plugins for visual testing, for using Gherkin language, for making stubbing or mocking somewhat easier, etc., etc. There's a huge list of those plugins. And yeah, really, I'm only mentioning some things that attracted most of my attention. Here are the links that I promised I would add about reading up more about some things that I mentioned. And that's it, really. That's really not all about Cypress, but that's all I had for today. And now I will be happy to answer any questions that you have. So I don't know, as they were available only to organizers, I guess you will pass them on to me.
Thank you, Aiste, for a great presentation. And we have few questions. So first one from Martinez. Does Cypress support multiple configuration profiles? For example, when I want to run same test in 5 different test environments using different username passwords, etc.
Yeah, it does. I haven't tried that out yet, but I saw it somewhere that it had something about environments. And there's this config file, Cypress.js, where I think you can specify them.
Okay, thank you. We have another one from Davila. Aiste, hi. Can you tell shortly how did you start your career as QA? Also, from your point of view, what is the best way to switch to testing career these days? Where to begin? Has it changed since 10, 15 years ago when you started?
Okay, that's a long question. Remind me if I forgot some part of it. I started as a fourth year student, and a person I knew invited me to his company to be like to go for the interviews, and I wanted to be a developer back then because I really didn't know about such profession as QA. And also I wanted to create things instead of yeah, I was really inspired by the idea of creating stuff. Now when I tried it out, I found it really much more fun than I imagined. Well, basically they showed me in the interview that it could be interesting, and also I started automating almost from the beginning. So then back then it was much more research had to be done, but then I found that I actually do create things, and I do create things that almost don't exist. Like there are way more developers than there were QAs back then. So it was also bringing something new and building the culture somewhat. I think now it's different because it's much more popular and there are coding schools and whatnot. And I see people switching. I think these various helping initiatives, either paid ones or like Women Go Tech, help. But I haven't been there, so it's hard for me to answer like how I would do that.
Thank you, Aiste. Another question from Lina. How would you suggest writing tests that would run multiple times using different users? Where to keep credentials?
Yeah, so if it sounds a bit like data-based testing, and for that the data would be in some file. I would put it in some file. I think in Cypress case it will probably be in those fixtures. So you have, like, I had one user there, but already in the list. And if I would want to parameterize that from, for example, continuous integration tool, then I think that it's possible totally to pass it into Cypress and have it outside of the code. But I would need to look into the specifics of that project. But basically, okay, if you mean for different environments, different users, then it's as simple as parameterizing which environment it is and then having some logic in the tests for that. But if you want to repeat the same test, just because for one user it might act one way and for another there could be a bug because they, for example, have different data, then it would be just this file that is a source. But I don't know about Cypress if it has this feature that, like, for example, I mean, it has where you specify, like in the table format, not table, but like, you know, these brackets, square brackets, the data that you want to provide, and then it just repeats that test. So I haven't got to that page with Cypress.
Okay, thank you, Aiste. And we have another one from Alexandru. Does managing large pages with many selectors get difficult over time when using Cypress?
No idea. Yeah, like I said, I am just basically trying it out. But if you mean managing because it has this different pattern, so I don't know if it would become slow on execution side. But the way I see it from code writing, it's same as with any tool, and I actually switched a little bit already in my current work to defining those elements as a huge list of element descriptors on top of a page object class to just using them in the function or method where I use it, because many of them are only used once. So managing them is neither more difficult nor less difficult than in other tool, in my opinion. It depends more on how you organize your tests. I don't know if I answered this question the way it was intended to be asked or answered. So if not, you can repeat it, I suppose, or just comment more.
Yeah, thanks, Aiste. We have another one, and this is from Erikas, and Erikas is raising his hand. So I'll try to unmute Erikas. Erikas, please ask Aiste.
Hey, yes, first of all, thank you. And I got such a question. I've been in QA for a while now and working mostly with manual, and I've been always interested in automation, but I've never had any experience. And now I'm really looking into it. I've been looking in and playing a little bit with Cypress for a while, and I'm thinking, is it the best selection for the first automation app, or maybe I should consider another one? Thank you.
Okay, that's a really nice question, because I was thinking about when I was deciding on a tool to show to the women in Women Go Tech that will have not even seen any automation at all. And to me, it seems it's one of the easier tools. There are other tools like, for example, Catalan and so on, that are kind of a mixture. They are more UI based than coding based somewhat. So they give a lot of help. But I've always personally liked writing code that I can totally control and visually see, not switch kind of between these two modes. And Cypress has that. And it has also this visual field set, so you will know better how you feel with it and if it's the right tool for you. But I think it's one of the easiest ones to start.
Okay, Aiste, thank you. And so far, the last question from Gediminas. It's partly related to what you already talked about, just maybe some clarification. Gediminas says, hi, would you suggest moving from Selenium to Cypress? What was your motivation to learn Cypress?
I have been to this, I wouldn't suggest to switch if you have already a big code base of tests. I have been there with my previous projects, and if it works, it would cost, I think, too much to rewrite it. But if you are moving to a new project, I think it's totally worth it for learning purposes and because it's really good experience. But you might see that Cypress doesn't support something. For example, if you're in your particular project, you want to open 2 different browsers at a time with different apps, things like that. So so then it might be not a good idea. Or you have already, I don't know, certain culture or framework that you have written on top of Selenium in your company. We have reused such of that in my previous job. Then it also might be too costly, but otherwise I think it's good to try out and see for yourself in a real project if you are starting from scratch. Why not? Also,
Well,
Cypress is actually developing, so some things that some people commented 1 year ago that didn't support, it does now. So it's not there where Selenium is, and some things it will probably never have, like different language support. But some things it will have that it doesn't have in 1 year.
thank you, Aiste. That's all questions. Thanks for a great presentation and answers to the questions from the listeners. It was a pleasure to listen to you and learn from you.